Every, welcome everyone to the Power Hour. I'm hosting this week's Power Hour on behalf of Katrina Arsman, who's not able to be with us today. So I hope I get it all right and able to manage the conversation, which is a really interesting one. And I'm joined today by Peter Broberg, who has a business in WA. And is also a pure bookkeeping licensee. So welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Deb. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good. So it's all about doing a business health check. And Pete and I have been talking about this a bit just before we went live, and there's a lot in this as well. What I'd ask is that anyone who's got a camera, show your camera, and if you want to say something, take yourself off mute. Put your hand up and let us know, and we'll talk to you. It's really a conversation about how to do a business health check, how to make sure that your business is ready to grow. And I know, Peter, you did a lot of things because you came from outside of the bookkeeping industry initially, and then as you were coming into it, you thought, I need to make sure that I've got the foundation set up. So I can grow a healthy business. So do you want to give just a little bit of background of your where you started and what sort of things you put into place to make sure you were able to grow your business successfully?
Yeah, certainly did. Yes, as Deb said, I did. I came from a financial management background, and there was a time that I needed to make a change, and so I decided I wanted to start my bookkeeping business. I always enjoyed bookkeeping, and so when I started the process, I started doing research before I left my job to find specific systems that will help streamline the processes around doing the bookkeeping for clients, but as well as for my own business as well. And so I did look at quite a fair few different options, and looked at franchises, and looked at even looking at probably purchasing a bookkeeping business as well. So there was a lot of options that I had, but at the end of the day, I wanted to actually control it myself. And so I decided that no, I can start the business up myself and find the systems associated with doing the bookkeeping for clients and myself. And so I came across pure bookkeeping and had a look at pure bookkeeping for quite a while before I decided that the systems that they had actually did help me do everything that I needed to do to help me grow my business as clients came on board. So they looked around for the software and implementing software and for my business. So I wanted to sort of move away. I didn't want to have a debtor problem. So Practice Ignition, I looked at that and absolutely loved it. So I signed up for Practice Ignition, but I also needed a works program, a management program. So Carve was the program that I chose for that. And then the rest just started happening from there with my business. As the clients came on board, those systems helped me get to where I am today.
Yes. And it's sometimes there's so many choices that are available in terms, as you say, you went for Carbon, there's Asana, there's ClickUp, there's all different kinds of workflow management programs. But I think whichever one you settle on, I think that's the one that you should stick with. I think one of the issues and very time-consuming thing that happens is that people see the bright, shiny, glowing thing that's over there and say, oh, that's going to actually solve all my problems. And even though you've spent 6 months setting up one system, you then jump over to another and you spend 3 months learning that new program. And there can be a lot of time wasted. It's not to say I think you should necessarily stick forever with something, but try not to jump around too many times because it's a very time-consuming thing.
Yeah, I mean, there are programs that, like if you're starting a startup business, it's the almighty dollar that gives you tells you what sort of system you actually would need to get. So if you're cash strapped, then you might start at something that's a little bit free. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but you're starting somewhere and starting with a system, and then gradually you might move on to something as the clients come on board.
Yeah, and also I think the workflow, it does come down to financial consideration as well. With any system that you're looking at, you've got to crunch the numbers and see, because so it can be a staged approach, would you say as well? That I know you chose to set everything up because you had quite a big vision, and you're obviously moving out of being an employee, and you were serious about growing your business. So you wanted all the systems in place right at the start so that you could just leverage that and jump off from there.
Yeah, well, I didn't have all the systems in place. It was just a gradual, as the business grew, then implementing other systems that also helped as well.
Yeah, awesome. Helen, I see you're on the call, and you're always a great contributor to our Power Hour, and good to see you, Jeremy, and the other people on the call as well. You're muted at the moment, Helen.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Helen.
I know you've got quite a established and substantial business with staff and things like that. When we're talking about doing a business health check, what would be some of the things that you would suggest that people make sure they've done, or what are some of the mistakes you made that looking back now, I wouldn't do this, or let's guide you along this other path?
I would definitely do the marketing, the branding, what Peter was talking about. I would do that up front. I think it's far easier at the start to know who you want to target. I know, people are not hungry, but they want clients, but then you end up with, not the right clients. That it makes it harder later down the track to sort of whittle out those ones. I guess if you're in the position to be able to do that, definitely I think it would be ideal if you can get your ducks in a row, so to speak, with business, your back end processes. Like if you knew, you'd say, well, you'd have all your implementation and PB set up, all your processes documented. In a perfect world, that would make it so easy when you're bringing on staff and new clients. Everything would, we have that perfect ideal that it would all flow, wouldn't it? And it would just save that point when you get to that point where you've got excess clients, you're working over capacity, and you're constantly working in the business. It's just so hard to even find half an hour to work on your business. And we're still struggling with that. You want to sit down and do the fun stuff, because I actually enjoy the figures and the goals that my business coach sets for me, but it's just that time. You just think, oh, when can I do this? And unfortunately I feel that suffers, because you want to give it your all, but you just don't have the time to do that. So yeah, I would say that ideally it'd be nice to set up all that business back end first.
Yeah. I think that you touched on something that I think is actually probably, look, you've heard me talk about it a million times, but I think for this subject, you can't not mention it. It's all about carving out time to work on your business. And that is working in your business, for those people that have never heard me say it. And it's not even my saying, it's Michael Gerber. Michael talks about the author of the E-Myth, and I'm very proud to be the co-author of the E-Myth Bookkeeper with Michael E. Gerber. He talks about the difference between working in the business and on it, and working in the business is actually in the area of production and getting the work done, which is something that we know well and we are very comfortable in because we are technicians. As you are growing and you are stepping away from that area of production because you put on staff, there's theoretically more time to work on your business, but the critical thing is carving out that time when you are still when you're starting out, and it is only you, or you might have one or two staff, it's still going to be heavily on you to be working in the area of production. But we've got to carve out time. The very first meeting I had with Peter Cook, and he said, do you think if you took the systems you had in your head and documented those and trained someone, would you be happy with that? Would you trust that bookkeeper then? And I went, well, yeah, I guess that would work. But what time of the day am I supposed to do that? Because I actually said, I remember it vividly, I said from midnight to dawn, because there was no time in the day. But and again, this leads into the reason why. Why would you work from midnight to dawn theoretically? Or why would you carve out the time to do something like marketing, which most bookkeepers don't like to do? Why would you spend time doing that when you could be earning money working in the business instead of spending time marketing to work, which is part of working on the business? Why would you do that if you didn't know why? Why not go and get a job? Just go and get a job. Because that's the reality of the world that we live in, that we are business owners. We are entrepreneurs. We might not feel like that, but we actually are. The technician part of us is just a part of the skills that we are going and that we're going to learn, and we will learn, or we are learning. So it's really important to be able to carve out that time. And when I said to Pete, what time of the day am I going to do that? I then went away and said, I just have to do this. I've got to carve out the time. And it was because of the vision that I had. So so many times we come back to vision, and I hope you can actually see, for those people that are maybe starting out, of why we keep coming back to what your vision is. And this is another reason why, because if you don't have a big enough vision, you're not going to bother carving out time, because there's no real pressure. It's easier to work in the business. It's easier to just keep yourself busy doing stuff that you know and you enjoy doing. So to learn a new skill, so Helen, to learn leadership and management, and when you first put on your first staff member, what was that like for you?
I often think about that because I was so desperate.
Yeah.
And I probably did all the wrong things, but I employed somebody who was in business, I taught them on site to do their bookkeeping. And it was just a joke to say, hey, you're doing such a great job now. If you ever sell this business, this cafe, come and work for me. And sure enough, that's what happened. So, she sold on a Friday and she came and worked for me on the Monday because I was so desperate for work. And she basically was able to go directly on site with a client in the same industry because, she was scared, concerned, like a little bit worried. And I said, but this is what you do. You've been doing this for 5 years for yourself. It's the same. You're even going to know the same suppliers and, so that was comforting for her, but it was not the norm. You don't get that kind of, situation where they're in the same industry going directly out on site. But there was still that learning process. But no skills test. But I knew this person. But since then, employing, it's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare. But now, hopefully third time lucky, we're going to go through the motions, hire slow, fire fast, so it's just going to be that way. I just think it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. We're going to find the right person that's, hopefully suitable for our business model and our vision. So
yeah. And Peter, when you, obviously you're still on your own, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Yeah.
But very close to, very close.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you carve out, do you have any tips? Do you do something with your calendar? Is it conversations with clients? How would you advise people that are starting out, and even established businesses that are still stuck in working in the business? How can they carve out time? What did you do to carve out time to work in the other domains of the business?
I made sure that I put aside a few hours every week. So usually I did that on a Friday. So Friday I found that was the day where that was like more or less like my catch-up day. However, I did set aside 2 hours, and in that 2 hours, I worked on advertising. So do all my marketing, working with my marketing businesses that I work with, because I don't do it myself, because it's just something that you should never ever do, is try to do your marketing yourself, because there are experts out there that do a lot better job than you. We're good at doing bookkeeping. We're not good at doing marketing, and we're not good at doing some other things as well. So it's just a matter of finding, you have to find the time. And yeah, and I know, we've just come out of the BAS period, the next BAS period. Now we're launching into end of financial year. But it's a great opportunity at this time, is to, when things have slowed down, is to start doing some work, things that you've been wanting to do for a while, and getting stuck into it and start doing it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you mentioned, like, we're talking about doing a business health check. One of the things that, I struggled with when I was growing my business was prioritizing my own business, my own BAS first, and treating my business like my best client. It was when I struggled with this, because I kind of felt like I should be putting everyone else's business ahead of me, but it was to my detriment that I was thinking like that. And in fact, I had to drastically change my behavior. My billings were going out late. It's great now with things like Practice Ignition, they all bill in advance, isn't it? Especially when you're on fixed fees, value-based pricing, it's all in advance. But the financial part of your own business, we often advise clients to do budgeting, to do cash flow analysis, and all those sorts of things. And yet we fail to do it in our own business. It's like a plumber with the leaky tap. They fix everyone else's leaky taps, and they've got, or the electrician with the light globe that needs replacing, and they don't do it in their own business. That's one of the biggest things that I learned early on in the piece when I started working with Peter Cook, that how important it was. Again, that's part of working on your business. Did you have that? I know you set up Practice Ignition. How was that for you, Peter? With the reason you set all that up?
Well, I mean, it was at the Practice Ignition was sort of around the time of moving from hourly pricing to fixed pricing. And so Practice Ignition was the tool to help me, instead of doing, creating invoices each month and doing timesheets and trying to calculate the hours that I needed to bill clients, and you've got to do at the end of the month, and you've got so many invoices you've got to get out and manage the money coming in as well. So Practice Ignition solved that issue, moving me away from hourly pricing to value pricing, fixed pricing. And the debtors issue is non-existent. I don't have any issues with customers paying me. They're all on a direct debit. And it's just that moving away from and managing that cash flow as well for your business as well. So as an example, COVID last year is a prime example where COVID hit and everybody had to go into lockdown, and we didn't know what effect it was going to have on our clients. Now, I'm based in WA, so we sort of didn't get hit as hard as what the rest of Australia did, but we needed to make changes. So I immediately implemented a cash flow forecast in my business, so that I can manage the cash coming in and what's got to come out, and make some changes just in case. So look at things like my app stack as an example. Looking at, okay, I wrote them all down on a piece of paper or an Excel spreadsheet and said, okay, here's Carve and here's Practice Ignition, here's Zapier, here's all these different app stacks that I've been using. Do I really, really need that in a cash when I may lose some clients? And so I did stop it. I did stop a few of them for a little while and was able to do things manually. But we have to react to whatever's happening in the environment at that particular point in time, and the same thing happens with the moving from when we first started, our bookkeeping was all manual data entry, and as all of the systems and like Receipt Bank and HubDoc and those programs reduce the amount of time, we all had to make a change. We all had to make a decision to say, well, if I'm going to stay in business, I've got to make the change. And so moving into fixed pricing is actually, you have to do it. Fixed pricing, and even other things that you're doing in your business as well.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I think absolutely people need to be moving away from the hourly rate with AI, and we've been saying this for years, really, to be moving into value-based pricing. It's often a struggle for people to make that move, but it should be treated as a priority, I think, for anyone that's still on hourly rate. Jeremy, would you like to, you're always a good contributor to the conversation as well. Come off mute. And
love being thrown under the bus, thanks, Deb.
Yeah, that's it. So you've
Feel
been
those tires now. Sorry?
You've been in business you've got an established business as well.
Yeah, so, still working on the business. So as I wrote it in the chat, there's never enough weeks in a day to get everything done that we want. It's sort of it's nice to say, set aside time to work on the business, and honestly, I try and do that every day without question. It's something that I allocate a minimum of an hour a day, effectively trying to build the business things that I need, the things I need in place. In regards to Practice Ignition, I was manually before doing proposals and things like that, jumped onto Practice Ignition, was running it for a while, and then stopped it myself. And I found that my return on my investment in the end was actually, I was mad stopping it. I just basically jumped straight back on, because at the end of the day, what I was losing in time and energy and my mind on top of that, trying to keep it all in place, where it was all automated through Practice Ignition. I don't have to, once I've engaged it, it's gone, it's done. So it's sort of, and it's just a matter of, the ones that I'm doing any top ups or monthly billing with, where it's still hourly, but I'm trying to get away from all of those clients, but there are the occasional bits and pieces that you still need to bill hourly. It's just a matter of jumping on those at the end of the month and just making sure that they're up to date and processing it. But it's now, they've improved the product even more now, so that you can actually do that a lot easier. And the thing that I've found with the going into fixed pricing too is the fact that it means that we are maintaining the value of our work, because obviously on the hourly rate, the clients were always getting the benefits of our brilliance as we move forward and got better at the tasks we were doing. We were getting quicker, therefore they were getting the same work cheaper. So as far as value to the client, it was great.
Yes.
As far as value to us, it wasn't. We were spending time learning and developing and getting paid less for it. So fixed pricing just is a no-brainer, or value pricing even better.
That's right.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Is anyone who's on the call, feel free, the people that are on, that are muted, if you would have anyone have a question about the things that you feel, or you've got the challenges that you're experiencing about doing a business health check, or there may even be elements of your business that just don't work well. And look, you've got the Brains Trust here. Pick the brains of all the people, the experienced people. Feel free, you can post a question in the chat box or unmute yourself. And thanks, Helen, for going in a 7-day lockdown. Woohoo. Yeah, yes. I think that it's one of the big takeaways for me is to treat your business as your best customer, your best client. Put your business first. And one of the ways I had to do that was actually I created a KPI report to help me change my behavior. And it was a report that I needed to complete, just an Excel spreadsheet of things that I needed to do to maintain the health of my business. And that was something that I needed to do each week. And I needed to report to my business coach, Peter Cook, on how I was progressing with the things that I said I was going to do. Now, Helen started off by saying, you've got to get your marketing all done. Marketing I didn't like, get your branding done and that sort of thing. Even the exercise of going out and you have to create momentum around your marketing. The only way of doing that is to be doing it. So every week I would block out that time in my calendar so that this was my marketing time. And I know Robin Flynn, who's not on the call today at the moment, but she's a great believer in the your perfect week. So create a calendar called your perfect week and put in there 2 hours of marketing every week and put that in, you know, when you're going to do that. And if a client rings you up and says, oh, panic, I need this right now, you say, well, you determine whether that is actually a panic deservedly or whether they are just panicking. And then you say, look, I've actually got another appointment at that time, but I can do it at 12 o'clock instead of immediately. So you change your behavior, you change your conversations, but it's the only way that you can actually, it's not the only way, it's a strategy to help you block out time in your week. So create your perfect week. You have to do your marketing. You're not going to create momentum around your marketing unless you're consistently doing it. Getting those billings out there, setting up the systems so that you can get paid on time. The fixed fees, if you're doing hourly at the moment, how are you going to transition into fixed fees or value-based pricing? There is a process with that. It's actually quite a large project, but you've got to start somewhere. It's amazing what you can do with 1 hour a day or 3 hours a week, but you need to plan those projects and plan what you're going to implement. Any thoughts on that, Peter? Have you got of how you might have helped yourself, trick yourself into being able to carve out that time?
Yeah, I as I said before, it's putting aside. I usually put a Friday aside to do that, and it was, and I try and do that religiously. Sometimes it doesn't work because you've got either family commitments or as you said before, a client ringing with an urgent matter. But I do make sure that I do at least have a couple of hours on a Friday to do that. And it's usually Friday afternoon, right towards the end of the day. That way that I've finished all my client bookkeeping at say 3 o'clock. And for 2 hours from 3 to 5, I then do the work that I need to do for marketing and other areas of the business.
Yeah. And I think part of this relates to the work that we do for our clients in terms of the advisory, how we advise our clients about cash flow. I've mentioned this before, cash flow analysis, budgeting, and, you know, setting up their chart of accounts. Are we practicing what we're preaching, really, essentially, is what we're talking about. Catherine, you've showing your video there. Do you want to have a chat, unmute yourself and chat about, are you having any challenges or any tips that you'd like to give for people that are starting out or even established businesses as well in this area?
Probably more challenges than tips at the moment.
Yeah.
I've just recently brought on my first part-time staff member, and what you're saying, I've jotted down quite a few notes down here, some really good advice, but I'm still currently on hourly rate with majority of my clients, and that's really been a shock to my cash flow now that I am paying out salary and I'm not getting paid for the hours they're billing till often 6 weeks after that first week. So I guess it's probably for me at the moment that value-based pricing and trying to look at moving everyone to a monthly fixed fee for service and paying in advance rather than arrears is the forefront of my mind. So if anybody has any advice or anything at all they can suggest, similar experiences, I'd love to hear about how people have tackled that if they've gone through it.
Far away.
Yeah. So with your hourly pricing, you should be at the higher percentile of the hourly rate that everyone is in the industry is charging for the hourly pricing, and that may assist and help you with your cash flow. You should ideally be up somewhere around the $85 mark per hour to charging for your bookkeeping. So
Yeah.
so if you're not at that level, then you probably need to.
Yeah, that's probably very true. I'm not too far off it, but I'm certainly not up at that top end just yet, particularly with a couple of my earlier clients that I haven't increased pricing on.
Yep. Yep.
Catherine,
But that then gives you, oh, sorry, Helen, you want to go?
No, you go. It's
All
okay.
right. That's okay, sorry. But it actually gives you the opportunity to move to fixed pricing. If you're actually charging somebody an hourly pricing and you've been doing it for a while, technically you really know what their annual amount is that you charge them per year. Divide that by 12 and that's your fixed pricing. Then introduce value to it after that to then increase the price. And then probably introduce efficiencies into the processing as well. So using Dext or using Updoc to assist and help with the processing, because that's, as Deb said before, that's what's happening with hourly pricing at the moment. Gradually your revenue is your cash is decreasing because of efficiency, and we've got to move away from that.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's okay.
Helen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I guess my concern was, Catherine, if you're dealing with your clients regularly, why are they paying you 6 weeks later? Like that's a concern itself with your cash flow.
So I have 2 weeks from end of month to pay, which is fine. But I've just signed up for Go Cardless, and I don't know if I'm using it wrong, but it's paying me out at around the 20th of the month. So it's holding on to my cash for an extra week before it's hitting my account. So that's something I probably need to get in touch with them as well, because I noticed that a lot of my clients paid really promptly. They seem to love. I've just added it in through Xero. But yeah, it's not flowed through to me as quickly as I'd hoped.
I think the actual payment can take sometimes, even with practice ignition, anywhere from 3 days to 10 days, whichever. But you're going to get it, so it's not an issue. I don't find.
That's it.
And your trading team, so you can't decrease them while you're still on hourly.
I definitely could. It's just it's just one of those things, I guess, around tightening up the processes and systems and things. It's just been 14 days from when I started, and I haven't looked or reviewed or checked that, and it hasn't been a problem. And it's not a problem. My cash isn't a problem at the moment. I'm just like, oh, that's dipping down a lot lower than normal throughout the month, and then it's back up again, which is fine. But I'm just conscious that that's where you can fall into traps down the track. So I need to get onto it sooner rather than later.
I remember when I started out, and we were back then always on site visiting people every week, and in a week we could go to, some people for 2 hours, others for 4, others for a whole day. I was very strict, and I think I've said this before, like if I was going to leave the house to leave my children, it had to be worth it. One, I had to make money. I had to enjoy working with the client, and above all, I made it clear in the first interview, I am paid 7 days on the day. You want me to return? Make sure that money's in my bank account before I'm back here. Because, why else would you do it? While you've got kids at home that you enjoy being with, why would you go and do all that? Yes, you need the money, but why keep working if you're not getting the money? It just didn't make sense to me. So that was something that if they paid staff weekly, they paid me weekly. No exceptions. So that was something that I was, and look, sometimes it could stretch out, but we never let it get beyond a certain volume of cost, and even, it never went beyond 14 days. I mean, now with practice ignition, I'm similar setup with Peter, with Carve and everything. It's great. It saved me admin time, and there's no data issue. So it's something I think is priority to work towards. I've got that down here. I again, heading into 7-day lockdown, I'll have a bit of extra time on my hands, so I'll be doing a bit of research that I didn't have planned or scheduled for next week now.
Yeah, and if that, I found myself in that same position, Catherine. I was charging hourly rate. In fact, I was charging hourly the whole time I was in business. But I don't do that now. Just saying, that's what I was doing. Don't do that. And I found myself in serious cash flow issues because I was not as disciplined as Helen as asking, you must do this and you've got to pay that and all that sort of thing. And it is, if you start off with those foundations, we're very similar to, because I started off with the same foundations. I didn't look, if they paid me late, it was only me, and it didn't matter so much. But once I started paying staff, it was a whole new ball game. And then when I had 3 or 4 or 5 staff, which is when it was still going down that path, then it was dire. So you're definitely catching this at the right time. So that's the good news. There is still a bit of work for you to do and conversations and things like that, but you're on the right track to be picking this up immediately. And I agree. And we often say when you're moving from hourly, it's what Peter said before, moving from hourly to fixed is a good way to transition to value pricing, which is ideally where you want to be. One thing I would say is when you're doing that calculation, you add on, so then you'll come up with the divide by 12 number, then you'll add 10%, you crunch that again, and make sure you're factoring in your BAS and your IAS preparation and anything else plus that might do, and you have a strict scope of work for that fee. So it might mean a new engagement letter, or at the very least it will, I'm sure it will, when you bring in the fixed fee, it will require a new conversation with the client about this is what I've calculated, and this is for this scope of work, as detailed as you possibly can. And then you explain the expectation that if you're quite happy to do more than that if they want, but that will require a recalculation of the fixed amount, or you might do, if it's a one-off thing, you might calculate a one-off fee for some extra thing that they're asking you to do. But to be like when I wasn't doing direct debit or anything like that, I needed to go around to every one of my clients and physically with a carbon thing, not carbon with a K, duplicate copy of, you've got to physically sign this direct debit form and get their driver's license and all this sort of thing. I had to go around physically go around to every client. Thankfully you won't have to do that. It's so much simpler these days. But it was a painful process as well, because they were going, why am I going on direct debit? And all this, I don't like direct debit, all this sort of thing. It's a whole new ball game now. So that is that's the other good news about you doing this. But yes, it does need to be done sooner rather than later. The other tip that I would give in relation to your staff member is, have you set expectations about how long the work will take? And do you know that? Do you know you're not giving a new bookkeeper to a new client or anything like that, are you?
No, I'm not. No, I've been very careful to follow your advice on that. I've been slowly essentially passing over some of the smaller clients I've worked with for a very long time and that I know very, very well, so that I can spot anything that might be untoward. I am still implementing the phase 3 of the process of pure bookkeeping, but that's definitely something that I'm very conscious of. So I guess I'm learning the importance of the bookkeeping manual in that process as well. I did have an issue last week where something took about 3 hours longer than it should have done. So I've had that conversation as well. So again, it comes down to the clarity of the instructions that I've passed on to her. That's where the problem was. And I know that very much from what she said back, how that ended up costing me that extra time. It's part of the learning process, isn't it, I guess? So wear that and move on. But it's definitely something that I need to really make sure I crystallize over the next month, is getting those manuals written up with any gaps filled in that might come up over the next couple of weeks.
Yes. And with the client manual, you've probably heard us say before, what I recommend you start off with is a checklist. So a client checklist for a particular task. So it might be payroll or something. I know we've got the client's bookkeeping manual in the pure bookkeeping system, but it really needs to be, I think, whether it's PB or whatever, a combination of a checklist, and that could be tasks in your workflow management. Ideally, that's what it would be. So you say, this client, payroll every Wednesday, bang, 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 all the things that you know that you check, but they're just in checklist format or task format. And then there might be a link in that task to an external online document, which will describe what that is, or to a Loom video, which you demonstrate what that is. And the way writing a client's bookkeeping manual is not easy. And it's like you go, it's one of those jobs, because you're busy already and you've got to get that documented. So the way I did it was I did the checklist of what needed to be done. So whether that's a task in your workflow management, and then when I explained that task, I would then, that the bookkeeper would then go away and perform that task according to the way I explained it. In the meantime, I was creating a document which explained that task. So the next week when she was doing it, or the next time, there was a link to that document. So rather than coming to me, she would follow the instructions, and that's when it shows up whether your instructions are detailed enough. Because she will come back, if it's not detailed enough, she'll come back with, what do you mean by that? Am I supposed to do this like that, or that like this? And then you go, oh, I haven't explained that well enough. And you know, with pure bookkeeping, that's how we constantly keep it updated. When you come to us and say, I don't understand what you're explaining in here, and we go, oh, okay, let me explain that another way then. You do it in the same sort of process, but these days with your Loom videos, I don't know if you've ever used Loom, have you? Yeah.
Yeah, I used it for the first time this week again to explain one of the tasks and how to perform it. Yeah, yep.
And then you can create a library of things, your Loom videos, whether it's, because some things you'll be able to teach and train your staff will be kind of generic, that might be able to be applied across several clients or a number of clients. And so you'll have that in a library with a link to that same. Ideally, you want to, do one thing and have it cover many things. So create one Loom video that will cover many clients if you can. It may not always be possible, but think about that when you're creating your Loom video. Who else can I use this for? Oh, yeah. Use this one for that client. So think about that when you're creating whatever documentation. But start off with the checklist or the task. And that's the easiest thing to get out of your mind. Yeah. Because you know the task, and it might be, and so for all your other clients, she's got X number of 1 or 2 clients that she's working on. For all your other clients, start creating those checklists now. So as you're doing the work, have your workflow management program or an Excel document, and you say, right, payroll, open this up, go to these timesheets, check this against that. So, and then you go away and do it, and then you get up to the next step, and then you fill out the checklist of what the next step is, and then you go do that step, then you fill out the next step and do the step. So you're actually doing it, but you're not putting a lot of detail in. The detail comes when you're actually handing over to that bookkeeper. Yeah. Because it's very difficult to do the detail when you're actually doing the work. Yeah. Because most of the time there's no time to do that. You're just quickly getting the work done, and then there's no real time. But there should be, what I do recommend is that you carve out enough time to at least do a checklist or steps in your workflow management. And that's when you build it over time. So it might be, okay, this time for this client, I'm going to document the payroll process. Next week, I'm going to document the accounts receivable process. The week after, I'm going to document this. And there may be some things that you'll be able to incorporate into what's into pure bookkeeping as well. So you might be able to, you don't want to explain anything that's already explained in the PBS. Yeah. Any other questions, Catherine, around or challenges around that?
That's great. That's been some really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Mm.
It's it's like you don't really understand. I think it's a bit like giving birth. You can explain whether you can ask about it. Excuse me, gentlemen, for mentioning.
Sorry, Deb, I don't care how many videos you show me on that. It's never going to work.
So you explain to someone or to a woman what it's going to be like, but they don't really get it until they're going through it. But the good news is that you've picked this up quite early, and you do need to take action. So that's as you say, use this crappy 7-day lockdown to catch up on all these other things. Because there's no socializing, I assume. That's what we're doing. It's a full lockdown.
No.
Great. Anyone else? Lisa, I see you're there. Melissa, have you got any questions?
Hi, sorry, I've been doing payroll.
Payroll.
I'm like Catherine with the fixed fee. I think I brought it up on the last call we had. So that's probably my biggest thing is I'm certainly doing it in arrears rather than in advance. So
Has anything? So I think that was on the weekly support call, was it last week? Yeah. Did you do anything, or what has anything changed, or have you put in place anything from that call?
Not yet. It's kind of in my head, but I did like the fact that you brought up about because a few clients I've had for almost a year, so it wouldn't be hopefully too hard to sort of average that out. But then I've also got to add in extra. But I certainly don't, as Peter was saying, with fees, I sort of aren't quite up there at that figure. So, which when I've got 6 clients, so I don't really want to lose too many of them because I probably should be increasing. But
well, we're coming up. We are coming up to the time where we should be putting our prices up anyway.
Yeah.
So that's what we should be doing the next month.
Yeah. Well, I was sort of hoping I could implement this in July 1, but I've got to go and do my research and get all my figures together. So that's something I need to get done.
Yeah.
Which I better add to my weekly accountability.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. And this is part of working on your business and carving out that time. And really, there's a lot of things to do, I know, and Jeremy said before, there's just like so many things that needs to happen, and which one is the priority. And I think that's a really important exercise to go through, that working out with so many things that are on your to-do list. What is the thing that's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck this week? So you'll have let's say you've got your 90-day goals, or you've got a goal to have that done by July 1st, which is basically you've got 4 weeks for that. Yeah. So if you were to, but the good news is you've only got 6 clients. You haven't got 60.
No.
So I would suggest that you, I don't know if you've done this, but break that down. You've really got, I'm looking at my calendar, you've really got like say 4 weeks, and they need a little bit of lead up time as well, probably too. So let's say you've got 2 weeks to get this organized. That with 6 clients, that means next week you do 3 clients and the week after you do 3 clients in terms of the calculation and things like that. And look, when I was first starting out, I was undercharging so badly that I had to put my prices up $10 an hour. And I did that for like 3 years or something. And everyone else went straight to the rate that I was charging, that I was supposed to be charging. But I didn't want to put them up $30 an hour because that made me feel a bit nervous. But so I did $10 an hour for the 3 years. So work it out, even if it's a little bit on the conservative side for this one, and then you'll learn a lot over the next 12 months. But just make sure that you, the big thing is make sure that they are clear what they're actually getting for that amount, which is essentially that scope of work.
Yeah.
And then if they wanted anything above that, then that's a different conversation, or it's going to be a different cost that's outside of what this is. And you monitor the transactions to see if changes are happening. So if they suddenly put on 3 staff and, another branch of something or other, and all their business just blows out of, it's got to be subject to review, and a fairly regular review, which would be at least every 3 months.
Okay. Yep. So are you saying just have one sort of just one, say, contract or quote for them, none of these choices of what they want to have?
Yes, yes. So the transition to value-based pricing, what we recommend is to get into fixed fees to start off with, which is doing that calculation that Peter mentioned before. You work out, which really shouldn't take you very long to work out.
No.
Because you've got all the information in your, is it Xero? You're in Xero, aren't you?
Yeah, mostly QuickBooks, but one on Xero. But yeah.
Well, wherever you build them from, just pull out a report to say what you've charged them in the last 12 months.
Yep.
Which is because it's almost 10 months, and then extrapolate that to 12 months, divide by 12, add 10%, make sure you've got your BAS and IAS preparation in that, and list down what it is that they are getting for that money. And in the engagement letter, it might be a new engagement letter that you get them to sign to say, this is the new scope of work and this is the new fixed fee. This is subject to change. It will be reviewed every 3 months. That needs to be in the engagement letter as well.
Yep. Good, thanks.
So you should be able to do that calculation, because there's not all the behavioral, economic, psychology, and all this sort of thing that happens with value-based pricing, and working out if that is a different project. But we want to get you onto fixed fees so that it gets people used to paying in advance. So they go on fixed fees, direct debits at the first of the month. It comes out of their bank account. Is that how you guys do it? Is it the first of the month?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I scatter it.
Scatter it. Okay.
I usually.
Sorry, go Helen.
Mine just starts when the client signs. Like when we do the deal and it's okay, I just start it from that day. I'm not fussed if it's the first or the middle, but generally the first couple of weeks of the month. So, yeah.
It helps the cash flow as well.
I have mine spaced weekly and monthly, effectively, depending on what the client's arrangement is. But it's all prepaid, which means that if it doesn't come through, then there's a phone call. And if I have to pause the work for a while until it's paid, then we do.
Go you, Jeremy.
That's all right. I'm sure I'm not alone on that one.
Yeah.
So, Lisa, what you'll find with going to fixed pricing and having that discussion with the client is that the client's probably, if you have the discussion around, well, this is the figure that you're going to be charged every month. So it helps her cash or their cash flow, as well as helps your cash flow as well. And then you'll find that the clients will just sign on. They'll just say, yep, not a problem. Now they know how much it is per month. No surprises.
Yeah. Yeah, true. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
So try not to make it into too much. We can sometimes make it into a really huge thing. What we're saying perhaps for this year, that you're not going to bump it up 50%. It's not going to cost them 50% more. You add on 10, definitely add on, it has to be at least 10% more from what it was for what you've been charging, because everyone needs to increase their prices every year. And I don't know what CPI is at the moment, but I imagine is it still 3 or 4% or something like that. But when I would add on 10%, but make sure that you factor in your normal BAS lodgement. I assume that would be part of your current billings.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, make sure that you do that. So it shouldn't be that hard to calculate that. The thing that might be stopping you is nervousness about having the conversation with them.
Yes.
But you've got the last 2 weeks. If you do that, in fact, you might even be able to do 6 clients in the next week. You work it all out, and then you've got 3 weeks to go to 6 clients. So it's 2 clients a week. When I say go to, it might be however you communicate with them, Zoom meeting or just a phone call or whatever it is. But it's not unreasonable. It's quite doable for you to do that by the 1st of July. But to give them, you don't want to do that on the 30th of June, that tomorrow we're going on fixed fees, and because that might cause a bit of angst.
Yep.
But it's an easy sell when you tell them how much easier it's going to be for them to budget for their bookkeeping.
Yes.
Provided it's within this scope.
Yes, that's really important.
Everyone had it where it's been out of the scope, and what have you done? Have you then billed them separately?
Yep.
Okay.
You should be billing it separately outside your normal fixed pricing, because you should even have it in your engagement letter as well, to say that any request for that's outside of the scope of work will be will do you might actually have a discussion with them to come up with a fixed price for that particular work that they want.
Yep.
This is it's an absolutely critical step. Don't do fixed fees unless you have a conversation and in the agreement that this is the scope of work that you have agreed to. Anything above this will require an additional scoping and calculation and a new agreement. When you think about builders, years ago, we did a renovation on our house. I think you've done a renovation, Lisa, haven't you, on yours?
Yeah, we've been doing some. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you had any variations to the original quote that the builder gave, but in my experience, one time he brought in a window. It was laying up against the wall, and I said, "What's that? Where's that going?" And he said, "Oh, that's going here." And I said, "But that's really small. That's smaller than I thought. It was really narrow." And he said, "Oh, well, that's what you agreed to." And maybe I couldn't imagine what the measurements were. But when I saw it there, I went, "Oh, no, that's way too narrow. We've got this wall that's like this, and you're putting in a window like that. I want a window like that." Yeah. And he said, "Oh, well, that's a variation." And they actually bring out the blue form. I don't know if it's blue anymore, whatever it is, the variation to the original quote. And it cost me double what was originally for that window, obviously, because it was double the size. People don't even question when there's a variation to a building project.
Yep.
Like the builder says, yes, this will cost you $20,000 based on what you have selected here. This is the kitchen that you're putting in. These are the cabinets. This is the bench top that you've selected. And then you go, "Oh, no, I don't like, that's not what I imagined." "Oh, that's fine. I can change that. Let me fill out a variation form. That will cost you another $2,000.
Yep.
It's just, we don't even blink an eye. It is actually part of their business model. So why isn't it part of ours? We should have, in fact, Ron Baker, who wrote Implementing Value Pricing, I think they call it a change order. I think he calls it a change order or something like that, whatever you call it. But it's a big part of that is communicating to the client that this is actually, this is a variation to the original quote. And clients, it's fair enough to say that clients aren't used to bookkeepers talking like that probably. They're getting more used to it now, but they're kind of used to bookkeepers not being like builders or being, doing it like that. But that's what we do. It's like they say, oh, you can do this. Can you do this now? Oh, great. Oh, you're awesome. I didn't know you could do that. You'll be able to take over this from my wife who's been doing it, you know, and because you're so awesome. And you go, well, yeah, I can, but hang on a minute. It's outside of the original. You understand it's outside of the original scope of work. It's a different way of us communicating.
Yes.
It's instead of saying, yeah, I'll do that, and it doesn't matter, that'll be an extra 2 hours, so that'll be $120. No, it's not about that. It's different. It's a different conversation.
Yep. Great.
And speaking of that, I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thanks.
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you for your contribution, Peter. Awesome having you here as our guest. And Helen and Jeremy, always thank you for your contribution. And thank you, Catherine and Lisa. We love that. We love the questions that you bring in, and it really helps us to articulate, you know, our advice and be able to help you as much as we possibly can, which is what this is all about. So thank you for bringing your questions to the meeting as well. I hope you found that helpful. We're at the top of the hour. We will wrap up now. We will see you next week for the Power Hour, and Katrina will be back then. And thanks very much for attending. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.